is to the federal law, which is, oh, he could appeal to the Supreme Court. As such, then those judges would look at the Constitution as well and decide if it was a right or wrong for him to have been found guilty. We see that a lot of times with appeals being made. So that's one of the reasons. Okay, so the Constitution was founded in 1787, and it established our three branches of government, not just the one. And so that way, we know the equal representation and checks and balances, so that one branch is not more powerful than the other. Like if our president wants to sign a bill, it has to go through, the House and the Senate. It has to go through those two other branches. Likewise, if a bill gets through to the president from, if the other two branches vote on it, then the president still has the ability to veto it or to not allow it to pass. And so that is part of the systems of checks and balances, as we call it, is not any one person or any one branch has the power, because these people, we came from, a king who, depending on which church he was a member of, wanted to, kill the other ones or oppress the other ones. But then, these kings were fickle. Right? If they didn't like their wife and the church was like, well, you can't divorce her, they were like, okay, well, then I'm supporting the other church now. And so it was very turbulent for the people. And they said, we are free people. We don't need to be under someone like this. So we kind of set this up. And now it took a while to get the Constitution completely signed, because there were states arguing over, how much representation do we get, how much representation, we have more people than you, we should have more voices. And then they're like, okay, well, you have more voices, but you're also going to pay more taxes because you have more people. And then the southern states were like, but slaves don't count as people, we're not paying taxes on them. And there was a lot of contention there. And so a lot of the northern states had already started to outlaw slavery or prohibit slavery, and they reluctantly signed just to have a constitution in place. And that being unresolved did eventually lead to the Civil War. As we expanded, we acquired another state, and it was a fight over how many voices they would have in our government, like how much representation, and that basically led to the Civil War. But that's another day. And so in 1789, James Madison saw some things lacking in the Constitution, and he introduced the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is also like the first 10. He introduced 19 points. Not all of them were adopted, but 10 of them were, and they are known as, they are the first 10 amendments of our Constitution. We call them the Bill of Rights, and they guarantee personal freedoms and rights. And they place limitations on government. So like the First Amendment, we talk about a lot too in America. It's like, honestly, people know the First, the Second, and I think the Fifth Amendment. The First Amendment is the right to free speech, which is usually, we use that to talk about protection of the press. So the media can say what they will. And I think the hope with that is that the media will say the truth. Unfortunately, there's sometimes like bias in media, which is a problem. And we see that, sometimes the freedom of speech. I love the freedom of speech. I support it. But I still see where it can be a problem. Like last year, when I read the essays for the English club competition, and it was about hoaxes in social media and how Indonesian government was cracking down on it, I was kind of like, whoa, like y'all can get fined for saying something and sharing information. That would never happen in America. But I can see the benefits to cracking down on that and having, because there's a lot of false information out there. And sometimes, it's stupid false information too, where it's like, why are you sharing this? Like, it's just sensational. But you're just doing this for likes and clicks, and it's not really helping anyone. But especially the information that hurts people, I'm like, okay. But, as such, we have the freedom of speech, so we are free to say what we want. And unfortunately, like, we're free to say, like, racist things. We're free to say hateful things. Now they do crack down on that now for, like, hate crimes. We had a case where a man was shot in the street, and they went back and are also being charged with hate crimes because of racist text messages they had sent amongst themselves. And so in that case, they were free to say what they wanted, but they're not free from the consequences of that. And we'll talk a little bit. I can talk a little about that case too. But so we have the Bill of Rights. So the First Amendment is freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of the people to peacefully assemble. That might be the third. And the second one is the rights of the people to bear arms. And I think the fifth one is the right not to incriminate yourself. I'm not sure, because I feel like those are the ones that people always quote, and nobody knows like all 10 of them. That's sad, to be in America and to not know, the 10 basic rights that we have in our Constitution. But sometimes that's just how it is with people. We don't know our history, and we don't know our freedoms. And then I put down here the 27th Amendment was added in 1992. So our Constitution was started in 1787, and then we have 27 amendments so far, as of when I looked this up yesterday, and that last one was added in 1992. So if we ever want to add an amendment, it has to be voted on and added in. It does happen. Like the civil rights, we had a lot of laws passed during the civil rights movements in the 60s, and those were added in as well. And so we can always add to our Constitution. So we had people, if we start all the way back here, there were people that were being oppressed in Europe, and the king, and to appease them because they were getting unsettled there, the king said, okay, I'll give you some rights. And then you have people that were still being oppressed, and they fled. They fled to America to start a place where they could. So some of them came to work, came to explore. The Pilgrims came because they wanted the freedom to worship God as their conscience allowed. And then, as the years trickled down, we had to make rules. In fact, back in the day with the early colonies, Quakers, settled in one area, Jews in another. We had even people that were not believers or didn't have a specific religion, kind of congregated in some states. More like Anglicans had more power than others, and so they would still kind of oppress the Catholics or the Jewish or the non-religious people. And then there are other states, where the Catholics have more power, and so they would oppress the Protestants or the other people. And then there are a few states like, I think Rhode Island was the first one to say that they officially did not have a religion. And in Pennsylvania was one where it was supposed to be, you can do what you want, one of the ones to have freedom as well. But so it was really important to go from the Mayflower Compact down to the Articles of Confederation, and then eventually the Constitution, just to get, things evened out, to have the representation so that each state, while separate, can get along and have established laws, that transfer. So if you go from one state to another, you're still have basically the same laws. Or, if I'm married in Pennsylvania, I move to Utah, I'm still married. Things like that. So the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment just says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so at the time of this writing, since they were separate states, they did not have a military, right? And so part of the reason to establish the government, like with the Constitution was to be able to have a military for protection of the country, and to be able to produce money and to have taxation, to fund the defense. And so that was basically the one reason to be a united country. Because up until that point, like during the Revolutionary War, each state presented its militia. A militia were just like untrained farmers, who represented, their state. They all came together. So there wasn't like a clear leader. I mean, we did have George Washington, but there was no like clear military. There was no military training. There was, they had to get trained like during the war. And so with that, they put that in there because we did not have protection and we've not been able to protect our country. And so, but the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so it's interesting when you go to interpret the Constitution. I didn't really want to go into it for the sake of time, but there's several different ways to interpret the Constitution. And, one of them is literal, like, okay, so the people can have muskets, right? Because that's what they used back in the day. They used the muzzle loaders, they used the black powder rifles. You had to put the ball in, put the gunpowder in, and jam it all down, fire, repeat. So there are people that believe, okay, so if we interpret it that way, there are also people that believe that, like, well, that's what the military had. So if that was the military of the day, then that means that today we can have the military's equipment. So I should be able to have like a tank, And so, and there's varying different schools of thought on how to interpret the Constitution, which sometimes gets interesting. And not all the Supreme Court justices agree on how to interpret the Constitution, which is probably a good thing. So I thought I would throw that in there in my meme. Okay. All right. And so, but I wanted to make a distinction because this is one of the distinctions sometimes people forget in America or, other places. We talk about rights and we talk about privileges. And so at the beginning, I talked about the Magna Carta and how the kings, gave the people rights. As Americans, when we wrote the Bill of Rights, excuse me, my brain kind of froze. We established that rights. James Madison added in a line that the rights. We believe that all men are created equal and have been. Oh, it's a beautiful line, but have been given by their creator. Oh, let me see this. I need to because if I don't quote it right, it's going to sound really dumb. Okay. So, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Shoot, where's the next? No. Sorry. But there's a line, that all men. Here we go. So. That's why I mixed up. So in the Declaration of Independence, actually, we put a line in here. Okay. Okay. So, okay. So in the second paragraph, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And so when they said that, you know, their creator has endowed them with certain unalienable rights, and so that basically started the belief that rights are given to us by God, or if you don't believe in God, by just merit of being human, right? Because you are human and you exist, there are certain rights that you have. Um, and so that's a difference from the Magna Carta, whereas the Magna Carta was kind of the foundation for law and constitution. Uh, that was given by a king. And here the people are saying, no, it's not a king, it's not government that gives us our rights, but it's simply God, or you know, God gives us rights, or simply because we exist, we have rights. Now, privileges are something that are given to us or taken away from us by those that rule over us, well, by our government. If I went and got in my car and drove into a crowd of people, I would lose my license because my license is a privilege. And to get that license, I have to, you know, take a test and study and practice and show that I am a capable driver. Um, and so there is simply a difference there between the rights and privileges. And I think it's, you know, the rights to bear arms, guns are very dangerous, right? And so sometimes I'm like, ooh, I can see how they could be something people could consider a privilege. The other hand, though, uh, we've seen, you know, in countries where people don't have the ability to bear arms, they cannot stop their government when their government gets out of line, or goes a direction they do not like. Or like in our case, you know, there are so many guns. If we take guns away, there will still be criminals with guns. A lot of us think, not everybody thinks that way. Like I said, it is a hot topic here in America. Not everyone agrees. There are people that want to see them taken away, and I can see where sometimes they would feel that way, especially with the violence. However, you know, one school shooting or will be in the news for months. But if you take away guns, there will be other ways. We've had, you know, people drive into crowds. You know, there's knives, there's bombs, there's ways. There are always ways. So, you know, people, whether they are mentally ill or just evil, will always find a way. But I did have a friend who likes guns and has a YouTube channel with guns. And I said, when I was looking, I know last year with the survey, was the feedback that some guest speakers would be nice. Unfortunately, with his time zone and his work schedule, he was not able to actually guest speak, but he said he would put together a video. I hope it plays smoothly. If it does not, I will, or even if it does, I can put the link in the group chat after the lesson. And it's just a little bit, some of it will go over what we talked about, and some of it will be new. So I hope it plays smoothly, and I hope you enjoy it. Whew.
Oi, laki-laki itu yang akan. Oi, ayo. Oi, ayo. Kata
Sorry,
siapa?
Mrs. Bday,
Ada
we
di
cannot
kardusnya.
hear the audio. We cannot hear the voice.
Oh, wait, so you couldn't hear the voice? Oh no. Okay, let me see. I'm like, tell me if this makes a difference. Could you hear that?
Yes, we can, but it is really low.
It's really low.
Yes.
Okay. Oh dear. I don't know if I can make it any louder. That's my microphone. Oh. Let's see.
Travis, also known as the Not So Tactical Dad on YouTube.
Is that better?
Yes, it is better.
Okay. All right. I will stop pausing it now then.
I am here because I was asked by Danielle, a teacher in English, to talk about the United States and our gun laws and how we have the Constitution and some things like that. I was told you guys were interested, and so I hope you enjoy this video. I hope I do a good job at it and explain, and if not, give Danielle your questions and she will forward them to me and I will definitely get to them. So we'll go ahead and talk about a few things related to the United States and how we have certain gun laws and certain constitutional laws and things like that, and then as that relates to it. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, I want to start off with talking about a little bit who I am. So my YouTube channel, which doesn't have very many videos, talks about how to defend your family, how to take care of your family, and how to safely do that around with firearms. I know that in Indonesia, your gun laws are very strict. And I know that they've gotten a little easier since 2002, but they are still not as easy as someone might say in like the United States or other countries like ours that have these kinds of laws. Now in the United States, every state has different laws, and although we have the Constitution, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, we have different laws in each state. I live in California, which is quite a bit more restrictive than the rest of the country. The only other state that is about as restrictive as ours is New York, and there are a few more like Delaware and a couple others that are pretty restrictive. And I'll talk more about what those restrictions are and how they affect us here in California. I want to get started out with something that we always do in the gun world, is to talk about safety. There are 4 rules of safety. Now I have another video with my daughter that you can see on my YouTube channel that talks about 3 rules of safety. There are generally 4, and you can kind of combine them depending on what they are. But they are, number 1, always treat a firearm as if it is loaded. Right here, I have a handgun. This is considered loaded at all times. Now I'm pointing it in a safe direction because there's nothing but roofs and walls and things like that going up this way. There's no people that way. So it's pointed in a safe direction, and you want to check to make sure that there's no bullets in there, there's no magazine, because once you take the magazine out and you pull that back, that will eject the round and you make sure there's nothing in there. So now I can slide the slide forward and pull the trigger, and there will not be a round in there, but we always want to treat it like it's loaded. The second gun law is never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to destroy. Firearms are dangerous. There's no way around that. They can be safe if you treat them with respect. So you always want to keep it pointed in a safe direction. You never want to be waving it around and pointing it at other people, because if there's a small amount of a chance where there's a bullet in there and the gun goes off, it can hurt someone. And bullets don't just stop. They go and go and go unless something stops them. So they can be dangerous. Now the third rule is be sure of your target and what is beyond it. Obviously bullets can go through walls, they can go through paper, they can go through things like that. So if you have the opportunity to go to a gun range, which I assume is what you guys have to do in order to shoot your guns, is you want to make sure there's no one in front of it so that no one gets hurt in front of the target, behind the target, or around the target. Now the fourth and final gun safety rule is always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. You see this gun, I always have my finger up here and along the slide whenever it is not being used to shoot. If you have a round in the chamber, the slide is back, there's a magazine in it, and your finger is off the trigger and nothing goes into here, there's no way the gun can go off at all. There are certain guns that have had issues with them being dropped and they fire, but those issues are very quickly fixed. Obviously, there's money involved, there's safety involved, and so that gets fixed. But if you never put your finger in the trigger guard, it will not go off. And that's why if you ever have a holster, if you're allowed to carry it, you always want something that covers that so that nothing can get in there. So that's it. Always treat a firearm as loaded. Never point it at anything you don't want to destroy. Be aware of your target and what is beyond it, and keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Next, we'll talk about the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States was ratified, and that means put into effect after the Declaration of Independence, and it was put in the Bill of Rights. Now, the Declaration of Independence was in 1776 when the United States declared independence from Britain. And then shortly after that, the new Americans really came up with the Bill of Rights, which was the first 10 amendments. The first amendment was the freedom of speech. There are actually 4 other things in there: the freedom of the press, the freedom to assemble, the freedom to redress of grievances, and the freedom of religion. Basically what that says is we're allowed to say what we want. We're allowed to put things out in the press. So we are allowed to say things in newspapers and on the media to get the truth out. We are allowed to petition our government to fix laws and problems that they've created. We're allowed to worship whoever we want, and the other one that I can't remember. Those are very important things. And the Second Amendment, which arguably is probably one of the most important, is the right to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment says that we are allowed to have firearms, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, but we are allowed to have firearms to protect our country in the event of war, and to fight off if our government wants to commit atrocities against us. And that sounds like a terrible thing, but if you live in a country where the government and the police and stuff can do things to you and you have no way to save yourself from that, it's incredibly important. So that's why we have that. Now, the Bill of Rights started the Constitution. It was the first 10 amendments. Our Constitution now, I think, has 27 or maybe 28 amendments. I think they're talking about a 28th right now. But the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791. So it was December 15th of 1791. And that was when they signed the bill saying that we were allowed to have firearms to protect ourselves from enemies, foreign and domestic, which is what the military agrees to when they join. So that is something that is very important in our country, and the way things are portrayed on TV and in the movies and in the media is not how those of us who are gun owners feel about it. We have a great pride in our country. We love our country. Things just go the way they go, and that's why our Constitution has the Bill of Rights, and we have the Second Amendment. All right, so we're going to talk about now some different types of firearms, and I hope you guys enjoy this part because obviously this is my favorite part. I'm a big fan of protecting my family. In California, we have some pretty terrible laws as far as that goes, and they're very restrictive as far as what we can buy, what we can have, and things like that, whereas the rest of the country can kind of have whatever they want, and we don't have the types of crime and things like that that everyone expects. In California, we have a lot of crime, and unfortunately, because we're a restrictive state, you can kind of do whatever you want and no one's going to fight back, because it's very difficult to be able to have a firearm in California and be able to take it out of your home without any issues. Luckily, where I live, I am allowed to have a concealed carry permit, in which a tiny piece of paper that I have to pay a lot of money for, which allows me to carry my firearm out of the house. This is one of my guns that I can carry out of the house. This is a Glock 19. You've probably seen it in just about every movie that has ever had a firearm. Obviously, mine has a lot of different things done to it that make it a lot more fun, easier to use, and honestly, it looks really cool. So I have a flashlight on here that allows me to see in the dark. I have a red dot sight, which you've probably seen in maybe movies or video games, where there's a red dot in here. You put the dot on your target, you pull the trigger, and that's where it goes. I have really big hands, and this grip is not very big, and so I have this thing here that allows me to get a better grip on the gun. And then I just have it painted kind of, so it looks really cool. Now, this is a handgun. It takes a magazine in here, and you load it, you pull this back, it picks up a bullet, and you shoot. And this is what we carry, the kind of stuff we carry on us. I have a smaller gun that shoots the same caliber. It's 9mm, which has been around since World War II. This one shoots 9mm. The other one shoots 9mm. And then I have a revolver, which I think you guys might have access to. I don't know if you do or not. Go ahead and let me know. I'd love to learn. And the revolvers have a cylinder on it that takes 5 or 6 rounds, and it spins as you pull the trigger and fires. I have one of those. It's really tiny, and it's easier to conceal. Now, the other thing we have shotguns. I'm pretty sure you guys have shotguns and rifles there, which are generally the types of guns that restrictive countries have. You'll have bolt-action rifles where you pull the bolt back, put a new round in, and you're good to go. Or you'll have a shotgun, either a pump-action shotgun or a double-barrel folding shotgun. I don't have either of those, unfortunately, and so I don't have one to show you. But the one thing I do have is rifles. Now, I have a couple of different rifles. This one is the AK-47. I don't know what your guys' military or police have, but I'm guessing it's probably this. And this is the world's rifle. There are millions and millions and millions of these made ever since 1947. And these ones, this is no different. This is an American-made one. So it's, I don't want to say higher quality just because it's American, but it is made here in America, and it looks really good too. It's not old and beat up like a lot of them you would find nowadays. The thing about California, we have to have things like this. This is a fin that makes the gun less easy to use, which our government here in California thinks makes it safer, and it actually doesn't. It actually makes it incredibly hard to hold on to, and it makes it really silly. That is something we have to have in California in order to own this gun legally and not go to jail for a long time if we're caught without it. It makes it very dumb, but it does satisfy the legal requirements so that I can have that gun and be able to take it out of my house without any issues. Now, you've probably heard of the AR-15, which everybody talks about in the media and on the news, on TVs. You see the military using a similar rifle. AR-15s are not the rifles that the military have. The military has fully automatic guns that continue to pull the trigger as you hold it and just keeps emptying out rounds. Ours, you have to, every time you pull the trigger, the gun goes off. So they are not the same. They may look the same, but they're not. So when you hear those things on TV about America and our guns, the AR-15 it's probably the most popular rifle in the United States. It does not stand for assault rifle. That is something that a lot of people don't know. AR stands for Armalite Rifle, which is the first company that manufactured the gun and sent them and put them up for sale to civilians. It's a very common misconception that it means assault rifle, which it doesn't. Assault rifles are banned in America. Assault rifles are defined as self-loading, fully automatic rifles. They are not necessarily banned in America. They're banned in California. We can't have them here for sure. But most of the rest of the country is allowed to buy them as long as they pay the government a lot of money and do a very long background check. And you're never allowed to take them out of your state. You're not allowed to give them to your children when you die, and lots of things like that. So they are not banned completely, but they are very hard to get a hold of. You will not see them in a mass shooting. You will normally see either a handgun, which has very little ammo, or you will see something like an AR-15, because they are very easy, not easy to get, but they are very widespread because they're just common. And they're a lot of fun to shoot. If you look on the internet, on YouTube, anywhere, you can find videos of people shooting them. They're a lot of fun, and they're very, very common. That being said, in California, it's very difficult to get an AR-15, a normal AR-15, and you have to have these kinds of features on them, just like the fin grip I have on my AK-47, and it makes them very difficult to shoot. If I were to move to, say, Arizona or Florida or Texas, one of the other states, that is not an issue. And the funny thing is that California has a much higher crime rate with all of the gun laws that we have, and places like Texas and Florida and Alabama and Ohio and other states like that don't have restrictive gun laws have very, very little crime. New Hampshire is another state up near Delaware and New York that has an incredibly low crime rate, even though they have almost no gun laws. They can own pretty much anything they want. They can own the silencers you would see on the movies, which are not silent. They just help your hearing adjust to the sound better because it's not as loud, but they are not quiet at all. I've never had the opportunity to shoot one in real life because I live in California, obviously, but I do have friends and family that live in other states that have them, and they're perfectly fine. In fact, I believe in the history of the United States, there's only been one crime committed with a suppressor, and that wasn't a serial killer murder like you would see on TV. That was basically someone killed another person, and it was not a legal kill, and they weren't defending themselves, or they were determined they weren't defending themselves, and that's how it went. So as much as you see in the movies, the hitmen and the serial killers that use suppressors and things like that, it's just not true. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I answered as many questions as I could. I appreciate you guys watching this video, and I hope that Danielle can forward me some of your questions and I can send it back. If you're able to comment on this video, go ahead and do that too if you have a YouTube account. I hope you guys learned a little something about the United States and why we have the firearms rights that we do, even though in California it's not the same. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a great day.
All right, I think I am back, and all right. So guns. So I hope that video was helpful. I will go ahead and put it in the group link in case it was buffering or lagging, since my friend did put forth some time to kind of make that. So I thought that might be helpful. Am I still? No. Okay. So anyway, yes. So that is about guns, and so kind of the different types we have and some of the laws. And how, even though we are the United States, each state is a little bit different, which is kind of nice, though, too, because if you don't like it one place, hey, you are free to go to another place within the country still. So, yes, and like we're talking in the chat a little bit, you know, Miss Henny said that she didn't even give her son a toy gun. And, I mean, and honestly, I respect that, you know, because they're not toys. And whether a child should have a pretend gun to play with, will that lead to gun violence? Maybe. You know, what we have is, you know, usually when we have these types of shootings with children, generally it's a child who got access to a gun and they did not respect the gun, or they were not aware of the dangers of the gun. Like, one of the things that they was taught to us as children, even in school, they were like, if you see a gun, go tell an adult. Don't touch it. Go tell an adult. Yes. Now, I mean, growing up, both my parents were in the military, so I was a number one dad. You know, first put a gun in my hands. I think I was like 7. He got a gun. And he was like, okay, everybody breaks into this house. You take this and you shoot them, you know? And I'm like, okay, Daddy. But, yeah, to be realistic, we were all going to die if it was on me because I couldn't even pull the trigger. It was too heavy. Because if you have, like, a hair trigger, you can just, like, tap it. But if you have, like, a trigger, you got to, like, pull it. And, like, I couldn't, my weak little 7-year-old finger couldn't do it. That being said, you know, and I knew where it was and how to load it. But I had no intention or desire to want to use it, especially on, you know, my siblings. But there are kids, you know, like if fast forward, you know, if we have children, I'm probably not going to leave it laying around and be like, if someone breaks into the house, like, no, like, I'll handle that. I'm the adult. You just go where I tell you, you know. But, you know, because the kid near us, like that kid, I think he probably had all intentions to hurt his sibling. I don't think at like 12 years old he realized the finality of death. And so we have a lot of parents who don't teach their children. We just had a case where there was a parent in Michigan. They gave their son a gun for Christmas. I think it was like a rifle, and he went to school. And the parents are at trial because they gave him a gun, and they have reason, you know, to believe that they knew he was not mentally stable. They knew he wanted to use this against, that he was going to use. So there's a text even between him and his mom saying, don't do it. And so I do hope that we hold more irresponsible people accountable, you know, because like, yeah, the kid's the one who pulled the trigger, but you are his parents, you're responsible, and you made it possible for him. Okay. So be responsible or don't have guns. Just that's my 2 cents. Unfortunately, not everyone will be responsible. That being said, we use like almost like all the time. Not all the time. I think there's still like half an hour left. But if you guys want to talk, I did have a game planned, so we can get to that. But if there were questions or comments, any discussions about guns, gun laws, gun calibers, the floor is open. If you want me to pass on any questions to Travis, I can do that as well. So go ahead, hit me with your questions. If you want to have a discussion, that's fine too.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wait. The first thing I want to say to you guys is, if you travel to America, don't mess with American. You don't mess with them, okay? Because yeah, you know. Well, yeah, I do really enjoy that video. I think who is him? Travis.
There we go. Yes.
Travis explained it very well. I understand now about them, and that is kind of new information for me about AR-15. It is not this sort of assault rifle, and yeah, that is new information for me. And for those of you guys who didn't get it about the topic today, let me explain this. Let me re-explain this in short using bahasa Indonesia. Jadi gini teman-teman. Jadi topik pembicaraan kali ini buat teman-teman yang kurang menangkap, yang kurang mengikuti, topik pembicaraan kita ini tentang senjata dan amandemen kedua atau Second Amendment in English. Nah, jadi di Amerika, orang-orang Amerika ini punya badan hukum untuk memegang senjata. Nah, tujuannya itu untuk protecting themselves, untuk melindungi diri mereka gitu ya, untuk melindungi keluarga mereka, melindungi diri mereka gitu tujuannya. Makanya di Amerika itu senjata tangan gitu, maksudnya kayak pistol dan senjata senapan itu dijual belikan, walaupun ada beberapa negara bagian yang melakukan mengeluarkan hukum yang cukup ketat untuk itu, tapi itu tetap dijual belikan secara bebas gitu. Jadi itulah topik obrolan kita pada hari ini. Nah, untuk teman-teman, if you guys want to ask a question, please give the question about what is that about gun knowledge. Or if you want to ask anything else, you can ask too. Feel free to ask. Yeah. But first question. Yeah. I want to ask. Wait. Oh yeah. Do you still have the gun in that picture, Miss Daniel?
No, that wasn't mine. Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
That was yours.
No, I don't have anything that big. So, I will say Travis made the distinction in the video between the AR and the assault rifle is because our media even is like does not know the difference. And sometimes our politicians, there's footage of them like, these things are dangerous, and they have a shotgun and they're calling it a rifle and their fingers on the trigger, and I'm like, you're why they are dangerous. But yeah, so it is a different culture. Please don't be afraid to come here, though. And like I said, it's divided. Some people are against it. So a lot of people, they won't have a gun. Then you have criminals, like whatever. And then you have, gun owners. And hopefully if you're a legal gun owner, you won't know that that person has a gun because it's not a toy. It stays concealed should they need it, and hopefully they don't need it. So we're not as violent as people think, although we do have violence because everybody in the world has violence. But yeah, so any good question?
Yeah, I know. Some people support and oppose the Second Amendment, like the liberals.
Yeah,
Conservatives mostly support it. It's like ideology conflict, right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, like.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, a lot of elections sometimes it's not like, we usually don't like either person, but it's like, are they for or against abortion? Are they for or against the Second Amendment? And that kind of seals up the vote for a lot of us. Some people will go for, like, free stuff. Anyway, the government, no matter which party you vote for, spends money recklessly. Oops, getting politics here. But usually, yeah, so it is kind of divisive, with the Second Amendment. You're either for or against it. There's very few people that are in the middle. And a lot of people will say, well, a lot of pro-Second Amendment people say, without the Second Amendment, we can't guarantee the other 26 amendments. Take that how you will. I hope we never have to fight our military. But there are people out there who, are willing to, I guess. So, any questions? Is anybody still here?
Yeah, guys. Do you have a question for Miss Daniel about guns or maybe something else?
Yeah.
Maybe I want to ask you your opinion about the topic that we discussed today. Bunga Sakura, can you open your camera? Halo, Bunga Sakura, can you hear me? Okay. Answer. How about the others? Do you want to give your opinion about the Second Amendment? I don't know you are still there or not, because you are not open your camera. There. How about Grace Cynthia? Can you hear me, Grace? Grace, wow, that was a beautiful name.
Wow, it's the Danielle and Efto show. Oh, man.
Come on, guys.
Hello, could I ask a question?
Yes, you.
Yes.
Yes,
Actually, this maybe I have a trick question. Maybe some of my question is out of topic and a sensitive question. Can I?
That is fine.
Firstly, is I want to know about. I heard many news from many television station in United States talk about the phobia of Islamic phobic, and then this is because of the tragedy 11 September with TC Tower, and it develops new stereotype about Islam and terrorism, and from there, Islamic phobia was born in the United States, but I don't know if it's true or not. And because of that, there are so many Islamic students, maybe from Indonesia, who want to study in the United States, but they are afraid of becoming a victim of Islamic phobic.
Mhm.
So how will America overcome Islamic phobic and stereotype about Islam that are already developing in society? And then the second question, I'm really curious about how America, what kind of policies did the United States make to become the one of a superpower country? Because it is not easy to make an ordinary system in a country. Like maybe in my country, when a government make a one system, so many maybe civilian don't agree with that policy, and then that rule, then they just not a follow government like that. It's hard to make an orderly system in one of country, but America can do that. So how?
Wow. Okay. How does our government work? That is a loaded question. But I'm going to go back to the first one. So with the Islamophobia, yes, it's a thing. I would say it definitely is. And it's just like with racism, no matter what we do, there are always people who are going to be racist against other people because they teach it to their children. And so even if they stopped acting out violently, they're still going to discriminate against someone based off of their race or their religion. And part of being American, is we put protections in. We're not supposed to discriminate. Like our governments, our employers, they're not supposed to discriminate against race, religion, skin color, or I guess that is race, religion, political beliefs. So if you're, a political belief than me, I'm still supposed to hire you, or even disability. As long as reasonable accommodations can be made. If you need a chair to do your job, we should be able to hire you. Now, that being said, individuals in the society will still act and do how they want. So with Islamophobia, there was a rise after 9/11. We had already been in the Gulf of I was going to call it the Gulf of Mexico. Wow, no. We'd already been in the Gulf of the Arab for the Gulf War in the 90s, probably fighting over oil. I was a very small child. And then, 9/11 happened, and there were reports of people, probably mispronouncing it, but the Indians, and they wear turbans. They are not Muslims, but people think they are because, how do I say this? America, you have a dark skin, you're obviously, a Muslim or something. And so we don't differentiate. We can't tell the difference between Japanese or Chinese. We're just like, you're all Chinese. Unless you're still bitter about World War II, then you're all Japanese, And it's really sad. And I hope, with the coming generations, we're changing that, to be like, different cultures. I mean, we can travel. We have the internet, but, there were these people, these Indians with turbans, probably going to mispronounce the religion. And people were like, yelling things at them, going after them because they were Muslim. And they were mad about that. And so I think since it's been like 20 years, a lot of that has calmed down. But I would, encourage them to research the area. If they do want to come, research the area where they're going to be staying and see the crime overall, like what the crime rates are. But I do think, for the most part, it has calmed down. But it also depends to where you are as well. I worked at a university here in the last 8 years, and they would do Saudi Arabia Day, all right? And they have this day, and they have like different days, like on 9/11, they would put out flags, and they had different events for the campus, but they had apparently a lot of students from Saudi Arabia that studied there. And so they had a day where they had the students come, and we drank coffee, Saudi Arabian coffee, which was not coffee, but kind of burned the eyes a little. And so I think it was more embracing, so more accepting, because people do still want to learn and know about other countries and religions and experiences, but we'll never completely get rid of the hate, unfortunately. But I wouldn't think that you would be targeted any more than any other person. And with that, you know, I know after 9/11, a lot of the television shows took place in the Middle East. You know, they were all military shows. So everybody was in the military. Everybody was, and it was fighting the terrorists. But not all Muslims were terrorists in the shows, which is good. And, or then, you know, if it wasn't, or the shows that took place over here, if they weren't like military shows, but maybe it was like a crime drama, all of a sudden the doctor, who happens to be a Muslim, is the main suspect, right? And they spend the whole show like, oh, this guy is obviously the suspect, and it's like, actually surprised he's not. Y'all got to stop being racist and judging him. It was this white guy over here. And so they kind of tried to also, you know, use our fears to kind of make entertaining media as well. So I think you would be safe to come. As safe as any other person. That being said, we still have to be smart. You know, as a female, when I go out of my house, and I live in a safe area, I feel safe. When I go out at night, if I go to the grocery store, I'm still got my keys in my hand. I know who's parked next to me. I know who's walking behind me. If anybody, I see what's all around me. And that's me feeling safe, but I'm still prepared, because you always have to be prepared. You always have to know what's going on around you. That's normal for us. I don't know what it's like in other countries, but I know if I traveled to another country, I would still want to pay attention to what's going on around me, because you never know what will happen. As far as our government, you know, I think one of the big things that helped us was a unifying belief in God. So when we were founded, we had this belief, and even though they did not all agree on the same way, like there were Protestants and Anglicans, and there, I don't think everyone agreed on the same way to worship. They agreed that we needed the freedom to worship, and that there was a God to worship. And I think that kind of helped unify them. Of course, now we are more secular. We are, you know, so not everyone believes that there is a God or even cares about worship, but they also think like, well, if you know, you can't quote God when you talk about government, because separation in church and state, which is a whole another thing, can't, you know, or maybe, you know, there would be people that are Christian and say, for instance, there's a school district who usually our holidays, we have Christmas break off. Well, what if we have some school districts where a lot of students are Muslim? They're not necessarily, they would need, you know, off for like maybe Ramadan or other holidays. And so all the Christians will be like, or not all Christians, not all the Christians, but like all the non-Muslims are gonna be like, no, because it's Christmas break, it's spring break, it's Thanksgiving break, like you're not special. But the fact of the matter is our country was founded on freedom to worship. And as long as you're not hurting anybody else, we shouldn't care. And that goes down the line. You know, if you want to change yourself to be a girl, you're wrong. But if you're only hurting yourself and no one else, we don't care, right? And that's kind of the belief. But it's harder now, and there's a lot of division, and I think our media also plays up to the division. They show you the crazy on both sides. But our government, I would be surprised to see in a few years, if we remain a superpower, if we remain a good place in government, just because of how fractured we are. So I really don't know how to tell you how to have a strong government. But I think the faith of the founding fathers played into that, and the struggle for freedom played into that, because, you know, there was a lot of sacrifice at the beginning to that, and we were all, a lot of us were related to the founding fathers if we've been here that long, and if we weren't, most of us came here and had family that sacrificed to get here and to get established. So I'm curious, is the price of a gun is expensive or affordable for general public? They are generally expensive. Like, they can run, I haven't looked at guns in a while, but like a nice handgun could be like $900 to $1,000, and this was like 5 years ago. There are some like cheap ones. They're really clunky and they're cheap, and they can be a few hundred, but they get the job done. And that's your handguns. Your rifles are more, and then of course like your accessories. You know, if you add the flashlight or the special grip or the red dot, those are gonna cost more. And so it's not, I mean, I guess I could buy an iPhone or I could buy a pistol. And that's, a lot of people don't have iPhones because the phone company is like, sign this contract for 3 years, get a free iPhone. But like, if I was buying the iPhone outright, I could buy an iPhone or I could buy a pistol. I know people that for a hobby, they buy parts of the AR. And so they, you know, buy, you know, this part and that, and they build them together, and it's a hobby for them, and it makes them fun. Now, of course, you know, we do have illegal guns, and those are easier. I don't say easier, but like, I don't know, they probably like just sell them for drugs or something, you know, just back and forth. So that's a different story. But for a law-abiding citizen, you know, they still have to make some, it's still gonna be a couple $100, you know. You can get like a really cheap gun, or you can get like a more, like the pistol he showed in the video, it's a little bit more than an iPhone, we'll say. Yes.
Okay, you already told us that gun is the cheap in the United States. So do I need a license to buy a gun?
Okay, so I do not know what that would take if you wanted to buy one as a foreign citizen. But if you are an American, it would depend on your state. So if I went to a gun dealer today and went to buy a gun, he would take my driver's license and everything and do a background check. And he would fill out these forms, so many forms about me, my driver's license, my information, submit it to like the FBI. They would do a background check, and then sell me the gun or not. Now, for me to leave my house with said gun loaded in my pocket, should I ever need to use it, and is a difference. So we have, you do background checks for guns, and then to have the license to carry the gun, or what we call concealed carry permit, is another process, and that varies by state. Like, I think the background checks are federally mandated, so that's, you know, the national government. And I think the carry licenses are by state. California is a little stricter, Maryland's a little stricter, New York is a little stricter. So once I go through the background check and get approval by like the FBI and the gun store gets back to me, I go pick up my gun. Now to carry it around, like should a guy try to steal my purse, I can be like, boom, boom, you know, whatever. I would go in Pennsylvania, I fill out a postcard with my name, my address. They go, okay, you've never been in a mental hospital, you don't have a criminal record, here is your concealed carry permit. Seriously, it's that easy in Pennsylvania. In Ohio, where I grew up, you go, I think there might be a written test to carry it. I think there's a written test. I know that. So you take a class, you take your written test, and then you also have a shooting test where you have to shoot the target, and you have to be able to empty so many rounds into the target in so many seconds. And if you pass that confidently and you don't, shoot, outside of the target, then you will get your permit. And so this is why some states will recognize other states' permits, and not all of them will, just depending on how strict they are. Let's see. Now, one thing I was talking about with EFTO the one day is growing up, I went to a gun show, and it was really weird. It was like a convention center. So you have all these dealers and they have their guns, but you have these random dudes running around. And like there were some guys like stereotypical like street thug, like I don't know, the baggy and the Timberlands, and just like, this is on YouTube, people are gonna come after me, right? Running around, they got their guns down low at their side kind of hidden, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is creepy. And they're running around trying to sell their gun. You also got like random redneck guys, I'll throw that out there, with their guns, and so like if you see this guy's gun, he's carrying, and it's empty, they have security at the door, make sure your gun's unloaded, but I could buy a gun at the time, and this was 20 years ago, so I don't know how much have changed, but at the gun and knife show, I could go and I could buy a guy, I could see Efto standing there with his rifle. I'd be like, hey, nice gun. He'd be like, yeah. Be like, you selling? I'd be like, yeah, $2, it's yours. I'm like, all right. One of his $2 run. And I could just give him the money, take his gun. It's mine now. And I have questions with that, though, because if I go and kill somebody, and Efto bought that gun from a gun dealer, it's registered to Efto. Now, Efto is the murderer, not me. I don't know if that's how that works, but I think that's how that works. But at the same gun and knife show, if there was a dealer, a guy from a gun store, I would have to do a background check. Now, like I said, that was like 20 years ago, so I don't know if things have changed, but that was my experience, and I was like, wow, this is so bizarre. And I also think it's kind of interesting if you watch, I don't know if you have CSI, but people can file off the serial numbers. And so, if they find a stolen gun or, a gun that's been used in a crime, well, the serial number's gone, so they can't match it to a person. But when they fire a bullet, they can match the bullets to the gun because the barrel leaves a marking on the bullets, almost like fingerprints. And I think that's kind of cool. I mean, I think it's sad that we need the technology, but I think that's really cool that we can, link everything together and eventually catch the bad guy. So some good questions. We are getting a little we didn't get to our game. I'm so sorry. I have a couple minutes left if anybody has any other questions.
Yep. Ada yang mau nanya lagi, guys? Do you have any other questions? Ya, jadi agak cukup mahal ya harga senjata di Amerika Serikat. $1.200 itu setara dengan 17 juta rupiah, sekitar segitulah. Untuk membeli senapan di sana, jadinya memang agak mahal gitu. Bukan agak mahal lagi, mahal justru ya hitungannya untuk kita. Okay. Do you guys want to ask something? We have 2 minutes remaining.
Oops.
It is almost 10:30 and it is going late night.
Bukannya beneran cukup murah, Kak. Kalau di Indonesia itu bisa sampai 40 juta, sebenarnya cuma 17-an.
Nah iya, cuma ya, tapi memang hitungannya apa ya, untuk publik itu agak mahal ya, karena itu kan ibaratnya sekebutuhan gitu, barang kebutuhan dengan harga segitu ya lumayan juga sih. Cuma ya nggak tahu juga ya perspektif orang sana, kita I don't know. Okay, do you guys have any question?
Maybe this is the last question from me.
Okay.
Miss Daniel, you have talked about privilege. Do win lottery is one of privilege?
Wait, try that one more time.
You have talked about privilege, that privilege is what we get, or because of some system, maybe we graduate from Harvard University is a privilege. If we was born as British Prince is a privilege. But how about if we win a lottery? It is a privilege.
I would say yes, because not everyone is entitled to the lottery winnings. But that is, oh, yeah, so that is the privilege to the person with the winning ticket. And you also have to be privileged enough to have money to spend on the lottery. So that would be a privilege. And that's something too, the government usually backs the lottery as far as with tax money. And so that money is supposed to go to public things like school or senior citizens. So that's kind of something that's controlled by the government in a way. So that is something that could be taken away. We could take away the lottery. And so that's definitely a privilege. Yes. Just like the concealed carry permit is a privilege because you have to apply for it and you can be denied. And like background check, it kind of makes it like a privilege in a way because you could be denied, but you're going to be denied based off of mental competency or a criminal record. So, yes. But that was a good question. Any other questions? Everybody's quiet. Everybody left. Are you guys eating? Because Ramadan, is that, yes, it's time to eat? I kind of Googled a little bit about it, so I'm like, yeah.
No, the Ramadan is actually the Muslim starts to fasting from the early of the day until at least 6 p.m.
Okay.
They are fasting, yeah.
So they're all in food comas then?
Yeah, and they do that for a month, full in 30 days.
Whoa.
They celebrate Idul Fitri.
Okay.
Like a Christmas in Muslim version.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Nice.
Any other question, guys? Before we close this meeting? And maybe for the further meeting, we can talk about like driving license. Like the system of driving license in USA is totally different in our country, in Indonesia.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, if you, let's say you live in Pennsylvania, then you have to get a driving license of Pennsylvania states, right? And if you move
Yes.
to other states, then you have to get like another driving license, right?
Yes.
Okay, but in our country, one driving license is enough, and you can use it everywhere in Indonesia. So totally different, and we can what is that? Maybe we can discuss about it later in the further.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah,
so next meeting. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Maybe I will make a poll in our Instagram account about the next topic, and you guys can choose the topic by yourself, and the majority of polls will be discussed in the next meeting. Okay, I will put the polls maybe tomorrow or in Sunday.
There you go.
Okay, I think it is enough for today's tonight's meeting, and thank you very much for joining with us. And oh yeah, Miss Stanley, could you please send that video to our WhatsApp group?
Yes, I will do that. So,
thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. So please vote for next meeting. If not, I have plans because we will be celebrating Easter here, and I can always talk about chocolate bunnies and the giant bunny that lays eggs. That's a joke. So we can talk about driver's licenses, but please, don't be afraid to get with EFTO and talk about what you're interested in learning about, you know, because I can always fill the topics, but what you want to learn about, you know, is going to make it more interesting for you, help you learn the English better. So please reach out and do that. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope it was an interesting conversation for all of you. Have a good night. Enjoy the rest of Ramadan, guys. So.
Thank
guys,
you,
jadi
Daniel.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Eto. Thank you.
thank you Miss Hani.
Others.
Jika teman-teman mau request topik sendiri, misalnya teman-teman boleh hubungi saya gitu ya, kayak misalnya Kak,
Di grup WhatsApp.
di grup WhatsApp juga boleh, di ini juga boleh gitu. Misalnya kayak Kak, aku mau bahas apa ya? Aku mau dengar pembahasan tentang culture or traditional food of US. Nah, ya boleh lah ya, request aja di grup. Oke, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
We see you in the
See you.
meeting. May leave the Zoom meeting now. Thank you very much.
Oh.